my name's Aaron at Redbird Speed. Today we're going to measure up this 9-inch axle. So every manufacturer is going to have a spec sheet. They got the diagram, all the letters, want you to fill in the numbers. So we're going to do that today. So first, identify the rear end. So this axle will come out of a 9-inch Ford. So we're going to make note of that. Okay. So measuring this axle. So the first dimension on the spec sheet is going to be the C dimension. So that's going to be from outside of axle face to the very tip of the spline here. So the way I like to do that, I like to get something to prop this axle up, hook the tape measure on the outside of the axle face and measure to the straight edge. So outside of axle face, get you a good parallel dimension right here, right at 33 1/8. Now one thing I will add is if you don't measure using a straight edge and you go on the diagonal like that, it's going to add about 1/8 of an inch to your axle measurement. So on something like a C-clip axle, for example, that could be very critical that you get this axle measurement perfect. I mean, you definitely want to measure that using a straight edge. All right, so the next dimension that we have is going to be the A dimension. So the A dimension is going to be the hub on the end of this axle. So what we're measuring here is the diameter across this hub where your drum or your rotor are going to center up. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a set of dial calipers and we are going to measure across this hub here. So this is going to be a 2.875 for a truck drum. So one thing I will add, if you're going to go with an aftermarket disc brake kit, you're going to want to provide the measurement for the brakes you're going to be using and not necessarily what this come off of. Because if this big rotor right here has a 2.770 hub, it's not going to fit over this axle, so that is very important. Okay. All right, the next dimension we have is the J dimension. So that is going to be across the axle face. It's going to be the flange diameter. So we use a tape measure for that. We are right at about 7 1/16, right on the money there. So again, let's say you're using an aftermarket disc brake kit, you're going to want to provide the measurement of the center of your rotor or hat, because obviously you try to put this rotor over this axle, it will not clear. Okay, the next dimension that we have is going to be the B dimension. So that is going to be from the outside of the axle face to this bearing stop. So the way I do that, I take my straight edge, hold it up against here, get my tape measure, go from the outside of the axle face to straight edge. Perfect. And it's very important that you measure from the outside axle face to this point that the bearing presses up to. And you're going to want to have that bearing off the axle. It's extremely difficult to get an accurate measurement with the bearing on the axle. So we'll make note of that. Okay, the next dimension is going to be the H dimension. So the H dimension is this point on the axle where the bearing is actually going to ride at. So you got to be real careful that you're not measuring like down here on some seal surface. You want to get up here where the bearing actually rides. So again, we're going to use these dial calipers for that. I know we took a Timken set 20 bearing off of this, so I know it's a 1.565, so we are all good there. Okay, next item, spline count. We're going to be putting a 31 spline posi in this rear end, but I will tell you, you want to count the peaks. I recommend using a permanent marker, go around here, count all the peaks, or if you know you're running a 35 spline posi, just right on there, 35 spline. Okay, the next thing we have is bolt pattern and stud type. So on this axle, on a 5-lug bolt pattern, what you're going to do, you're going to go from center of stud 1 to center of stud 3 and add 1/4 inch. So let's see what we have here. All right, we are right at 5 1/4 center to center. Add 1/4 inch of that, 5 on 5 1/2 Ford truck bolt pattern. Now these are 1/2-20 studs, so they're about 1 1/4 inch, 1.5 long. So one thing I will add, when you're going from a drum brake to a disc brake, you'll want to order these studs at least 1 3/4 inch long to make up for the thickness of your hat or your rotor. So about 1 3/4" disc brakes, that is what we recommend. We've got those available, 7/16s, half 20, very common. So definitely something you want to consider when ordering your studs. So we have what we need to order a duplicate axle for this rear end. So if you have any questions about this sheet, if you're running through that, do not hesitate to contact us. Give us a call, 260-301-2424. You can get us through our website, email, social media platforms. Do not hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for. So if you have any questions, let us know. We appreciate all of your support. Thanks for checking us out. Hey, have a good day.